Hi, this is Pat McDonald, your host for Vote for Vermont, where our tagline is listening beyond the sound bites. The boys are not with me this evening. I have two co-hosts who seem to have departed this evening, so we can handle it ourselves. My guest is Robin Chesnut-Tangerman, who is the Progressive House leader and representative from
Middletown Springs.
Oh, neat. I don't know why I don't think I connected that. Welcome again.
Yeah,
You're
thank
back.
you.
Middletown Springs.
So I represent 5 small towns.
Oh, you're one of those that has to list it all.
Yes.
Oh, please do.
Tinmouth,
Yep.
Middletown Springs, Paulet, Wells, and the town of Rupert in Bennington County.
What a great area. Seriously,
it's a beautiful area, but it's rural. Largest communities, 1,500 people.
Nice.
So a lot of the traditional industries, farming, logging, slate.
A lot of knocking on doors in the middle of nowhere, right?
It's a lot of miles to campaign there.
Exactly. That's cool. Well, we ride our bikes down there a lot, our motorcycles.
Beautiful.
It's gorgeous.
Yeah.
Good for you.
The Meadowview Valley
well,
is
as we're
gorgeous.
chatting about where you're from, maybe you could tell us a little bit about yourself and let the audience know what you're up to.
Okay, happy to. I'm, as I said, I live in Middletown Springs. I'm serving in my 3rd term in the House and serve on the Energy and Technology Committee. Also serve on the LCAR Committee.
I heard, are you chair?
I am.
Oof, you must have been not thinking well when they asked you to do that.
Yeah, I don't know who I angered,
exactly. What did you do wrong?
But that's we can talk more about that if we have time.
Yeah, because I think people should know about LCAR.
In a nerdy kind of way.
Yeah. Well, no, I think it's a good committee. I've been before it for years when I worked for the state. So.
And as you mentioned, chair of the Progressive Caucus in the House.
Yeah, very nice. How many of you are there these days? You seem to be gaining numbers every year, which is good.
We are, and but there are nuances to it. That there are those of us who caucus as progressives are all PDs, progressive / Democrat,
right?
And there are in both chambers a number of DPs.
Oh, they ran as Democrats, but were accepted or endorsed by the Progressives.
Right. But in terms of caucusing, what matters is who you caucus with.
Right.
So there are 7 in the House and 2 in the Senate.
Nice.
But then about another 6 in each chamber that are DPs.
That's great.
So certainly
But they could caucus maybe with the Democrats?
Yes.
Okay. But you can count on them when you're in a pinch and need
support?
Well,
I know. It's a malleable situation.
Yeah, that's right. I remember Shap Smith, I said, my God, you've got, it's majority. He goes, you'd be surprised how hard that is because you have to send everybody home happy.
Yes.
And that's a tough thing to do.
Well, and we know from the recent override votes how difficult it is
that's right.
to marshal
by one
a
vote.
supermajority.
Yeah.
Yes, one
vote was for
one
the
by
family.
one vote and one lost by one vote.
Oh, I didn't know that. Was both of them were one vote?
Yes.
Ugh.
Yeah.
Well, that proves that every vote counts.
It absolutely proves that. And but in some ways, we talk about it being a very close vote, yet, as you know, the majority, the veto override needs to be a 2/3 vote.
Right.
And so it's actually not a close vote at all. It was the one we lost was 99 to 51. Which is a clear majority, but not enough of a majority.
Right. And as 55 folks said they weren't too thrilled with whatever the vote was. They were supporting the governor.
Yes.
Yeah, right.
Yes.
Right. So I just wanted to slip in a little bit about Burlington. I think almost everybody is progressive on the council now. Did I hear that right?
There are 6 progressive seats now. So progressives now have a majority of seats on the Burlington City Council.
Interesting.
Yes.
That's great. I mean, I shouldn't say that's great, but
well, they're young, they're dynamic,
Yep.
they're courageous.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah. Well, to get involved at that young age, I interviewed Erica Reddick. She was a Republican looking to get on the council, and she was dynamic and young. And I'm like, well, that's great that you. I was with a group of people, and she was there, and I invited everybody because I actually thought they were House and Senate and statewide offices. So I wasn't planning on doing anybody from a council, but she said, well, I heard you say come on. I said, well, come on.
And it's great to have that engagement regardless of political
Because
persuasion.
you got some big issues. They've got big issues in Burlington.
They do.
So
They do.
good luck to them, because it's a happening town for sure. So what was I going to ask you when you said, shoot, I forgot. But anyway, I wanted to talk about Bernie,
I've kind of been jumping around.
Yes,
some,
we have.
So sorry.
I have to stop that. But I wanted to ask you about Bernie, because you said you were at his speech that he gave the other day.
Yes. So I was invited to attend the
Great.
The event in Essex Junction.
Is it right?
And it was packed, a very enthusiastic crowd,
Right.
and a band played, and
Oh, neat.
speeches by statewide politicians,
Right.
and rev us all up, and then we waited and waited and
Ta-da.
waited, and probably 45 minutes or so. And I'm not sure what the delay was, but Bernie gave a Bernie speech.
Yes, he did.
It
Well,
was-
I was
it was
listening
very
to it
good.
in
Yeah.
the car on my way back from Burlington, so I was listening to him. Yeah.
And for his fans, that's the charm, that the
Yeah.
message doesn't change.
Right.
Hasn't changed for
Ever.
30 years.
That's right.
Yeah.
I give him credit for that. He's not,
And-
can't call him a waffler, back and forth. He
Yeah.
just sticks to what he believes.
And I think even people who disagree with his political message,
Right.
where he's coming from.
Yeah, well,
you know.
yes, and there's no surprises.
Yeah. But
He
it was
looked great, by the way.
He did.
I'm not a supporter, just if anybody calls me. I was telling you before, he's got a great sense of humor, but he looked great on the TV the other day. I thought, what is he up to? You would think
He
he
does. He
looks
looks-
exhausted, but he's not.
I would be exhausted.
Yeah, I would be
but,
too,
But he
exactly.
seems hale and hearty, and
Yeah.
in Essex Junction, he gestured, knocked over his water bottle, and caught it.
Oh, hey,
And
there you go,
I
reaction
hope I can
time.
do that at 78.
Is that how old he is?
It's somewhere
Yeah,
around
70,
there.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, they're all around he and Biden, and interesting.
Yeah, Elizabeth Warren's
Yeah,
younger, but
right.
I think she's 70.
Yeah, that was interesting. Anyway, so I think I was going to ask you about Alcar, since we talked about it a little bit. Can you explain Alcar? Because that's really an important committee.
It
You
is.
kind of make or break the bills to
and-
make them work.
But fair warning, this is where your viewers can get up
Yeah,
and
right.
get a snack.
Exactly.
and,
Take a break.
Yeah. So Elcar is the Legislative Committee on Administrative Rules,
Right.
as you know, and the rulemaking, which all agencies do to implement the policies and programs, is a defined legal process
Right.
involving public hearings and stakeholder input. And the last step in the process is they come before the Elcar Committee, and we review them, not for policy content,
Right.
but on a very limited spectrum. Are they arbitrary? Do they reflect legislative intent? Did they follow correct procedure? Those sorts of things. And so on that committee, all the rules come before us. And so it's an incredible variety.
Right. Oh, I bet you really have to know each
I mean-
subject very well, because you have to make sure the rule fits the bill.
So we met this morning.
Yeah.
We had two rules.
Uh-huh.
One was on the renewable energy standard, and the other was on licensing of ambulatory care units. Just,
Whoa, interesting.
that's,
There you go.
That's the spectrum.
Yeah. Well, years ago, Claudia Bristow was a from Council, and she insisted that every bill at the end give the department rulemaking authority and set out in the bill exactly what the scope of that rulemaking authority was. And she insisted that that's what should be. That's what the law says. And I don't think they do that. I think it's
It varies widely.
does it?
Um,
Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't.
For example, Fish and Wildlife
Yeah,
is granted rulemaking authority to manage game
Right.
in Vermont. That's
that's pretty
very
broad. Right,
The ambulatory care licensing bill rule that we saw this morning was the result of a bill last year that said the Department of Health shall make rules on
Right.
licensing ambulatory care
Right.
units by a certain date. Very narrow,
Yep.
very concise.
good. Yes, I think it's better, because I've, once or twice when we did rules, we sort of We maybe went over a little bit, and I think when you've got the bill so specific as to the categories of what you can make rules on,
Right.
I think it helps the department, and I'm sure it must help the committee to
It does.
to focus.
The Renewable Energy Standard Bill that
Yeah.
came before us, had been delayed several times because of objections or questions
Yeah.
from committee members. And those were resulting from ambiguity
Yeah.
in the original statute.
Right. And some
And,
departments might take that just a little bit further to make it less ambiguous for them, but maybe
Well,
not for the
then
legislature.
you run into the question of, is it arbitrary?
Yes,
Because
right.
they're interpreting legislative intent,
Yeah.
but are they interpreting it correctly?
Wow. If you have got a good
And-
committee,
We do.
That's
It's
good.
a wide range of views.
I bet. Well, that's
So
how it
that's-
should be,
that's
though.
good. It should
Yeah,
be,
right.
yes.
Yeah. Well, good. Congratulations. How long have you been doing that?
This is my third year.
You're kidding. Now, I didn't
No.
know that.
When we first spoke, I was blonde.
Oh, that's why I didn't recognize you. I just saw the guy that manages, oh, he's a tall blonde guy. But see, there you
That's-
go.
you see?
See?
Yeah.
Anyway, so one of the things you read on your website was that you were pushing for a national organization. I was very surprised by that because I'm assuming, like any party, you know, you must be in touch with other states, and if there are progressives in other states, which there are, how do you get a common core to focus on?
So interestingly, we are the only progressive state party in the country.
Get
In
out.
fact, we are the only third party in the country with representatives in the state legislature.
That is fascinating. How
It-
come we don't read about that often? That's really amazing.
I don't know.
You
It-
should write something about that.
I think it's fascinating, and I think it's horrifying.
Why is it horrifying?
Because there should be more voices
Oh,
engaged in,
right, that's true.
in political discourse, and on all sides.
Yeah.
So to me, that really talks about the stranglehold that Democrats and Republicans have
Right, right.
through the two-party system.
What a great article about, you know, what happens
And-
about three parties instead of two.
Maybe we should write that together.
Yes, we should. That'll be
Uh,
balanced and fair
so-
and balanced.
So
Everything
it
else.
certainly raises a lot of questions about our electoral system.
Yeah.
On Wednesday, I spoke to the Addison Democratic Committee
Yeah.
about ranked choice voting.
Ah.
I'm a sponsor of a bill for ranked choice voting. You obviously have.
I tried. We had a
Opinions.
woman here, and I finally understood it
Mhm.
because I don't think I'm unusual with other people. I just couldn't get it in my head how that works. And she was
And-
very good. She was from the League of Women Voters, I think.
Yes.
And I got it, and I've been struggling with it. I'd like to see it in operation more than once, I think, and then I might go for it. But
So there are a number of countries that
Yeah.
that have been using it since. I believe Australia's been using it since 1910. And my question is, are Australians fundamentally that much smarter than we are that they can
right,
handle
right,
a system
right.
that we can't? But mostly we're looking to Maine for
Oh, Maine has
experience,
that?
because Maine had a really interesting process in which the voters, I think largely in response to Governor LePage,
Character that
passed
he
a
was,
referendum
right?
to have ranked choice voting.
Oh,
The legislature canned it through
yeah.
maneuvering,
Yep.
and the voters came back and said, no, we mean it.
Notwithstanding the vote of the voters? That's good,
Exactly,
yeah.
and the Supreme Court, Maine Supreme Court ruled on it, that it was
No kidding.
valid and the legislature must implement it.
It wasn't a binding resolution, though?
It was.
It was, and
It was
he
a binding
overrode it?
resolution. They did the Maine Senate passed a delay and repeal
Oh,
provision saying if it wasn't implemented by a certain time,
oh.
then it would go
start-
away.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah.
There's always some way to get out of it.
So we're looking to them for their experience.
Nice.
In a state that in many ways is similar to
Yeah,
Vermont.
right. Should look at them at Act 46. They're all trying to undo it.
I've heard that.
Yes, they are. They're very unhappy
there's
with
sections
their
of-
Act 46. And how it
certainly
works.
sections of Vermont that are trying to.
Yeah, well, that's
undo
when we
it.
were talking about voting. Barrytown had 4 votes, all of them duly warned,
Mhm.
legitimate vote. They voted no, and were told by the state, too bad, yes. So
Yeah.
I just think that's bad.
So I actually opposed Act 46.
Did you? Thank you
I
for
did.
that.
because I didn't see it working in my district.
Yeah.
I thought there were some areas where it would,
Good for you.
but some where it wouldn't, and consistently voted against it or
Right.
for amendments that I thought would help.
Right.
But since then, I've taken the position that it's the law and we need to try to
Yeah, got to make it
implement
work, right.
Yeah.
I did go to the Supreme Court hearing of David, oh, God, David, I'm very sorry, I just completely blanked his name. We went to where David was presenting his opposition to Act 46 and the Supreme Court. This was the last hearing on the issue.
Mm-hmm.
It was spectacular. It was so fascinating watching how the court interacts with the presenters, and I was so glad I went. Anyway, so back on the Progressive Party. I was also reading, and I read it last time that you were on here, what the priorities are of the Progressive Party, which I don't think that they've changed anything. You had, if I may, just interested in human rights, livable wage, affordable health care. And I think in summary, when we were looking at it, your platform is based on economic justice and equity for Vermonters.
Yes.
That's easier than the than the other litany of things.
You can boil it down.
Yeah, but
to,
I think this year we've got the livable wage, and I think the governor hired a young woman to be race equity.
Yes.
Who's Susanna? And have you met with her?
I have met her, but I haven't sat down with her.
Oh, you should. She was on our show, and I was very impressed because she really does understand balance. And it's not just going to be about equity when she's out talking. It's going to be about all the things that fall under that category of fairness,
Right.
and she's got a really good handle on how to do that. Not that I think it's rampant in this state. I've never quite understood that, but I live in a bubble, so.
I think there is a lot that we don't question.
I think you're right.
And there's always the opportunity to learn,
Yep.
to ask those questions,
Yep.
and then to adjust our beliefs and behaviors as needed.
That's right, and I told her, I said, it depends on how you're approached that you're wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I had an issue here at the studio one time. There was a group of people here, and I referred to them as what I thought they were to be referred to. And the woman was with, and she says, that's wrong. And she was very kind. She said, this is how we refer to them. And it was the drag queens.
Mm-hmm.
And first of all, they look better than me, so right away we had trouble.
Well,
but she said to me, this is what you should do, and here's why. And she was very nice. I said, thank you. I said, I want to do the right thing. Just people that yell at you and call you whatever name, that's not who I am. Just tell me what.
Right, and I heard an interesting talk about this, saying that if somebody calls you out for using the wrong pronoun or wrong term, it's actually better, instead of saying, oh, I'm sorry, just say, thank you, indicating, I just learned something, and I appreciate that.
Right. That's great. Yeah, because she was great about it. I said, I did say thank you because I didn't want anybody to embarrass anybody, especially myself. So,
Pat, if I might, in that racial justice, there are many other that's inextricably tied to economic justice. And which I think we are learning as we go. And when we look at things like, in Vermont we talk about energy deserts or food deserts, and those often also relate to economic justice and racial justice. And it's not a distinct issue. It's an issue with tendrils in many, many aspects of everyday life.
I was covering Act 250 for Campaign for Vermont, and they added justice, exactly what you're saying, in Act 250 to make sure that the decisions that were made for this project or that project or where the project was, that it benefited all, and that there wasn't any exclusion of certain areas, certain people. And I thought, wow, it should be everywhere.
And similarly, in the Global Warming Solution Act, there's a subcommittee on equity in there.
Interesting.
And that's not necessarily just, it's not focusing on racial
Right.
equity, it's all of the disadvantaged communities
For sure.
in our town, including rural communities.
Right. Yeah, the poor and the people that are living by, on the
Right.
skin of their teeth, as they
Yeah.
say. It's really,
Exactly.
that's upsetting in this state, but anyway. So you mentioned something to me, which I was so embarrassed, I didn't include it in the questions that I sent you, but about what we were talking about when you came in, about COVID-19, about where do you see, the governor has already opened up the Emergency Management Operations Center in Waterbury,
Yes.
and they've got it staffed, so they're ready to go if they have to close something or something happens. So where do you see legislative involvement, or were you just more expressing your concern for where we're headed? Because we just heard today UVM closed, Middlebury closed. There was a couple of other schools that just closed down.
Yes. So really both, because there is a legislative role to play in allocating resources,
Of course.
and but that requires close cooperation with the administration
Right.
to then provide those resources to
Right.
people.
Right.
And I think there has been really good communication between the branches of government. My concern is that much of the economic relief that we've been hearing about is unemployment insurance or
Right.
payments to employers
Right.
or various things like that. But Vermont has so many self-employed people who would not be helped by.
And they wanted the tests paid for too, I think. Is that
Yes, so the testing is free,
free? Right.
and we are building up capacity to be doing the tests. But we're really trying to figure out what is the mechanism to best reach people, and that changes
Right.
hour to hour.
For sure.
One thing that is critical, but we haven't mentioned it, is childcare.
Right.
Or what happens when schools close
Right. Right.
and kids.
Mom and dad are working and
Right.
can't leave them home.
Exactly.
Wow. Too much. Are they close to meeting and having all these things ironed out, do you think? Or we're going to be reactive, which would be the worst thing to
No,
do?
so when I came in Tuesday morning, there was a meeting between the administration and legislative leadership, which I'm part of as caucus chair.
Right.
And so first thing Tuesday morning, we were meeting with the Department of Health, the Agency of Human Services, Department of Public Safety, Emergency Management, to talk about ideas, responses, get things implemented.
Right.
I think and perhaps even more importantly, to have a single channel of communication, which is the Department of Health.
Right.
And they are doing a great job. Their website is being updated frequently.
Maybe this will help with the relationship between the parties of late. There's a lot of anger because of Washington, and
Yes.
let's just call it what it is. And there's a my way or the highway sort of thing. We don't have the same cooperation that we used to have years ago. It's because of all the anger, not in Vermont, but it's fallen over from Washington, I think.
There is a trickle down.
Yeah, and I'm hoping maybe
certainly.
this is as though we don't want to be involved in it, but it might help a little bit, bring back some of the trust and some of the friendships that people had.
And what I'm seeing on the state level is no playing politics.
Good.
But people's perceptions are influenced by what their news sources are.
Right.
And I don't know how you get around that.
I don't. Well, you are in politics, so that's just sort of the nature, but you've got to put it in the right perspective. But I think there's a lot of politics in Washington.
Yes.
About this. I mean, how you can do that is beyond me. I sit home and yell at the TV going, well, stop. This is, it doesn't ask whether you're Democrat or Republican when it gets you sick.
Right.
It just attacks.
I don't think either party has an immunity.
No, I don't think so. So they better cut it out.
So I am encouraged by the
good.
state response.
Good.
Still evolving, certainly, but I believe the number of cases will increase dramatically in the next
Well, that's what they say, it's going to get worse before it gets better.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think I don't think they're overreacting. I think they're doing the right thing to stop it. If you can cut off all avenues, it will eventually stop, because there's no place for it to go.
There's the Cassandra effect.
Oh, okay, right, yes, right.
That if you, ban large gatherings, and you therefore prevent outbreak, you appear to have overreacted because there was no outbreak.
Oh, well, no. I do believe all the scientists and stuff. I don't think anybody's telling us something that's wrong. If you call a pandemic worldwide, that's serious stuff.
That is.
I mean, when they did that the other day, I thought, well, there you go. This is serious. And I think we're reacting the way we should react. I'm not sure about I was worried about closing of Europe. Not that closing China isn't bad, because we get so much product from them back and forth. But the European one, that could really impact the stock market, I think.
Well, you saw the stock market.
Yes, we
went down almost 2,000 points today.
Yes. God, I'm going to be working. I'm going to have to go back to work.
Yeah. So, to be honest, we are grappling with this in the State House.
Yeah.
And really, as you know, it's crossover. Tomorrow is crossover.
Right.
And we can get to that.
Yeah,
in a moment. So it's a critical juncture, but and we have the Joint Rules Committee has taken steps to ban essentially unnecessary groups, non-legislative groups at the State House.
To come in and testify.
Telling school tours to reschedule.
Right.
All of that, allowing for committee witnesses to testify over the phone or over Skype.
Good for you.
So providing a lot of alternatives to coming into the State House.
Great.
Trying to reduce traffic. But really wondering what's next. Do we close for 2 weeks? Or do we try to get the budget and the tax bill and the capital bill
Has anybody
through?
been saying May or some future date that they're pretty sure things will calm down? Because if it's still going on in May, I think we have more than a pandemic.
Yes.
We've moved to epidemic.
No, I mean, most of what I've heard is speculating in a matter of weeks.
Oh, okay.
That we could resume business,
Yeah.
but that's still all up in the air and really dependent on.
With the flu and stuff, I always get vaccines. You name it, I've got it, because I'm not like some, and I respect those who are worried about taking them for whatever reason or having their kids take them. I actually respect that, but I take them. And so when you know the flu's around, you feel a little bit more confident.
Yes.
But there's no such thing for this one.
There isn't.
No.
And for the first 2 weeks,
right,
when you could be contagious, you feel fine.
Yeah, exactly. That's the scary part. So you mentioned crossover, and for people, I think most folks' viewers must know, this is where the House bills go to the Senate, and the Senate bills go to the House, unless there's some kind of a action on the floor that says you can keep this bill here for a while, or somebody makes some kind of suggestion that you're going to miss crossover, right?
Well, it's pretty much all bills.
Yeah.
Except the money bills.
Oh, is that right?
Budget,
yeah.
the tax bill, the capital bill, and the transportation bill all have an extra week.
Okay. Oh, I didn't know that. And I always feel bad for the Senate, because like the Act 250 bill, they've been working on that for 3 years. And then they get it. And they have, 3 weeks or 4 weeks to do what's been done in 3 years, which is tough. But although I think I heard that they're already started getting testimony
and
on
they
Act
have to
250
do that as
to get
one of
ahead.
the 2 committees they work on.
Yes, right. Senators work on 2 committees.
Right.
Yeah, that's great. So what do you think has been accomplished between January and crossover? Are you positive about some things that have happened? I can name a few that I think you'd be happy about. But
I'm very happy about the minimum wage.
Right.
I'm very unhappy about family leave.
Right. But interesting that with the coronavirus now, it's going to be paid leave. That might see what comes of that discussion.
Exactly. I mean, you know, this is a perfect illustration
Exactly.
of our argument.
Right.
And to be fair, the House bill was not a perfect bill, and it did not include self-employed people.
Mm-hmm.
But it was a good foundation.
Could you how would it work with self-employed people? Who pays them?
They would pay in, like
I see. So
as employees. The version that passed the both House and
right,
Senate.
that they really pay themselves into.
Basically making an insurance payment.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. And the bill did not include them.
Oh, I see.
But
Okay.
but I think the coronavirus is really highlighting the need for these kinds of programs at the national level.
Yeah. I was laughing the other day, not that, just because I was thinking about the paid family leave, and I'm like, well, here we are.
Right.
How interesting. So you'll have something to talk about next year. Say, remember February of 2020.
Yeah.
So what else has happened that your caucus has been pleased with?
The Global Warming Solution Act.
Yes, right.
Which is really it lays out the framework for organized and concentrated effort on the climate.
Is this the bill that you can sue the state if they don't reach their goals?
It is,
can't
but
get
that's-
that one in my head at all.
So I'll be happy to talk about that
Please
piece
do, because I was going nutty the other night just
I was
yelling about
actually
it.
a little bit concerned about that.
Oh, good.
And we had numerous people in to legal folks,
Right.
Including the Attorney General.
Yeah.
And somebody said, so we're putting in a bill that you have the right to sue the state. And he said, what do you think I do all day? People already sue the
Right,
state.
yes.
This is not creating a new right.
Right.
People have the right to sue the state, and what this actually does is really narrow it. It admits that you do have a right to sue the state, which already exists.
Right,
There are no damages awarded.
right.
The judgment would be that the state has to be more effective in its rulemaking.
Yeah. It's just what the goals are very difficult to achieve if all goes well. And I'm sure it's just, I don't know whether the state could point to a specific, we couldn't make this goal because of X. Because it's all pretty.
And the language around it is that the state has to be making significant progress towards achieving those goals.
Oh, okay.
So there's some wiggle room, and part of that is the reality is that the information that we work with on emissions
Yeah.
is usually about 3 years old.
Ah.
So we don't, and I should also say that those figures are not based on measuring air samples.
Okay.
It's based on how much gasoline, heating oil, diesel fuel, propane, natural gas are we using, and also in electric generation, how much of that is based on fossil fuel.
Yeah.
And those are our emissions.
Not to point at anybody, but who do you think would be a likely suer, a plaintiff to file a suit against the associations who are very dedicated to the global warming, like VPIRG and stuff, or would it be an individual who somehow got impacted or hurt by anything?
An individual could, and a judge can also lump together a number of
class
cases so
actions sort of
that
thing.
they don't have to be
Yeah.
addressed individually.
Yeah. Because it pays for the attorney's fees and court fees.
If they prevail,
Yeah.
they will be
Right.
awarded attorney's fees.
Yeah.
Yes. And that provision, what we looked to for experience there was Massachusetts.
Uh-huh.
And the state of Massachusetts passed a similar law 10 years ago.
Oh, no kidding.
And that did not have the right to sue. And it also accomplished nothing, essentially,
Great.
until they were sued.
Ah,
And they were sued by the Conservation Law Foundation.
oh, okay.
And a judge at that point said, no, the state must take action.
Right.
This is the law. And since then, Massachusetts has made
Wow.
significant
That's
progress.
great. I just worry that why invite them? Because sometimes we've been sued and have lost royally, and maybe we should, obviously, but I just thought, why, why give them incentive?
It's, as I said, I struggled with this,
Yeah.
but eventually came to the position that it takes an existing right and narrows it. And so I'm comfortable now with that
Okay.
aspect.
Yeah, after a while, when you have to start talking about these things a lot, and that's why I like our lieutenant governor. I've had some issues, and I can't, I don't vote, and I'm not in the legislature, but he sat down with me one time, like an hour and a half, we sat and talked about, one of my favorite subjects was marijuana, and he just explained to me where, and I understand where he's coming from. I still don't agree, but I understand.
But you understand.
But I understand him, so
Right.
I thought that was pretty good. You have to be able to explain your position. So you're running.
I am running
Good
again.
for you. This will be
Yes.
your
So I'll be
fourth?
running for my fourth term.
fourth term. So what issues are you running on? I have a whole bunch of issues that you have talked about and been involved in. You have got, I have all of your bills that you,
It's,
busy guy, pages of, that's great. Because there's some really, I have to talk to you about a couple of them. You'll be very surprised about my response here. So
one of the things that I want to highlight both as an issue for re-election
Right.
for my campaign, and also as a component of the Global Warming Solution Act.
yeah,
So the focus of the Global Warming Solution Act is emissions reduction. I was pushing for building resilience to national disasters to
Yeah.
be equally in the bill. And we eventually chose not to go that route because emissions are measurable. It's very clear. We have the measuring devices. We know how to do that. The matrices to show achievement is
Right.
there. Less so with resilience. But to me, that is what is critical about this bill. And by resilience,
how would you define that, resilience?
so there are a number of ways that are obvious. You know,
Right.
we have had 300-year floods in the last decade.
Right,
So flood resilience, the
I'd hate to go through
superstorms,
that
you
again.
know,
Yeah.
all of that.
Right.
And what is that? Well, that's water management,
Yeah.
which gets into floodplains and gets into the soil absorption,
yeah,
which leads to the amount of organic matter in soil, and so it can absorb floodwaters, and the amount of organic matter
Yep.
is directly related to carbon storage. So that also ties in with the emissions reductions.
right,
But beyond the obvious things like floods, it's also, you know, we are, speaking of pandemics, we are in a Lyme pandemic. That is a disease.
oh, Lyme disease,
Lyme disease
oh, yes.
that has been increasing
Yep,
because
right.
we have warmer winters. We have a more conducive
Oh.
climate. It's been moving north. I would
I
say,
heard I know some people personally who, some don't get impacted, they have it, but it's not as big a deal. Other people, I know two people that have been so impacted by the Lyme, mentally, physically, it's really, it can be
really
devastating.
debilitating.
Yeah,
And I would also put electric grid and broadband
Yep.
and cell service in
Right.
that resiliency,
cool,
which ties into making our economy more resilient,
right?
to face not just the disasters, but changes in ski season, in sugaring. You know,
Right.
these are things that we need to
Yep.
be planning for.
Yeah,
And right now, with ski seasons, they still have essentially the same number of days of snow
yeah,
and days of operation, but in between those days,
they get warmth, right?
right, so
Right,
they're
you are.
making much more snow,
Right,
dealing with ice storms, with rainstorms.
right,
So spending a lot more money
yeah,
for the same hours of operation.
right, interesting, which is why they're all trying to be four seasons.
Exactly.
Just
Yeah.
to cover the costs. Oh, interesting. And where are you on the carbon tax TCI or TCI? Where are you on that discussion?
So broadly, I've been a supporter of TCI as a regional initiative.
Oh, okay, right.
You know, I got in a lot of trouble at home for this, but I've always said a carbon tax is a tool.
Right,
it should be on the table. But likewise, I have never supported Vermont implementing a carbon tax on its own.
Yes.
So I think TCI
We
is
are very much on the same page on something. So what is this?
So I think TCI is, 12 states.
Right.
And from what I understand, the tax, whatever it is, and
Right.
I will call it a tax.
Right,
There
yeah,
are people
it
who are
is.
saying it's a
It
fee.
is what it
but
is, no.
I'll go ahead and call it a tax.
Yeah, right.
Is at the distributor level.
Yep, right.
And we don't have distributors in Vermont. So if those distributors are in New York or Massachusetts, or distributors in New Hampshire distributing to Massachusetts, we would probably be paying the tax anyway.
Right, through them, yeah, right.
So we might as well be part of it
Right.
and actually collect the
Do
tax
we know
and benefit from it.
if the governor's going to join or not? Because there's a lot that have. I know Massachusetts. No, it's not Massachusetts. Sununu,
New Hampshire.
New Hampshire. He's not in it.
New Hampshire has
They're out.
has said that they are out.
Yeah, which could cause them, from what I understand, to be more expensive for them if they're not in the TCI. If I understand it correctly about the auctions and all the things that are involved in it.
Yeah, it gets to be very complex.
Exactly. Exactly.
And from what I understand, the governor is hemming and hawing
Hemming,
because
right.
it's
Well, it's very. I must say,
It's a-
it's very complicated. We had Matt Coda on from the Fuel
Mhm.
Dealers Association, and he was really trying to explain and was doing a great job. And
mhm.
I don't know that I can repeat what he said, but I get it.
Well, I
Yeah.
give Matt a lot of credit because he's in a difficult position.
Yes, he is, right.
He sees the writing on the wall.
Yeah,
He's a
right.
very smart guy.
Yep.
And he knows that the future of oil distributors
Right.
is diversification
Right.
and service.
Yep.
And
Yeah,
he's
he's
trying to move
It's in his blood. His father and
Yeah.
his grandfather started in the business, and he's carrying on the name. I wanted to. Where's the things I wanted to ask you about? Because you were talking about ethics. You have a bill H-121 that you were talking about, the State Ethics Commission. Is that something
So-
you've been involved in, or just it's on somebody's wall and not the?
So last session,
Yeah.
we did pass an ethics
Right.
bill,
Yeah.
which was a very watered down,
Right.
toothless,
Because just for transparency,
compromise version.
Campaign for Vermont was really pushing the ethics and is still
Yes.
pushing the ethics
Yeah.
because they need we think it needs a little teeth. And Larry Novins, who's the head of the ethics board, he is the perfect person for that. He is just an excellent executive
Mhm.
director.
So again, we're on the same page.
Yes,
Pat,
we are.
in
Well, I have to say, I don't want to cut that. I was at a debate in Linden College, and it was supposed to be a Democrat, me, and a progressive. And the Democrat didn't show up, so it was me and this college kid who was a progressive. He was getting he was so upset because I was agreeing with him on everything. And at the end, he said, "I don't understand." He was visibly shaken. I said, "Well, we haven't discussed where the money comes from." I said, "I think that might help you
Yeah.
understand what the difference is." But
I like to say that politics is not linear, it's circular.
that's true. That's true,
And
because you never
meet
know.
around
You never know.
on the back.
So where's
Um,
the
so-
death doula one? Oh, I'm sorry.
So I would like to see an ethics commission with more teeth,
Yep,
able to impose sanctions
you.
of various kinds.
yeah,
Because I think that's how you ensure trust in
right.
your
right.
institutions.
And people in the state, Vermonters, need a place to go.
Yes.
Because when I was head of the departments I was head of, there were always people coming to me. And I didn't have any authority to do anything. I listened and I bucked it up the food chain, but nothing would ever happen because there wasn't anything in place.
Right.
And we do have conflicts here, and we do, and it's a small
We do.
state. Most people have 10, 20 hats on. and
That's-
sometimes they don't see the conflict.
Mm-hmm.
So that's good. I hope they
Yeah.
do something. Because when I talk about it out in public, people really, they support the idea. Because they just want to know that it's
Right.
okay,
And they want accountability.
for sure.
Yeah.
That's great. So the other one that I wanted to talk to you about, H70, you were talking about requiring Medicaid to cover a death doula services. I had Anne Marie, what is her name? Anne Marie Kemple. She is a death doula. I had her on the show. She wrote a book.
I wish I'd seen that
Oh,
episode.
I'll send you the link. It was amazing, and if you want to borrow the book, you can. It's called Nesting. And she is so fabulous. If God forbid, I would call her because I would listen to her. So how did you get involved with doula? And just for people that are watching, maybe you can explain what the doula is.
Well, actually, I'll take it back a little bit.
Whatever, sure.
Do you know Stephen Kiernan?
Sure.
Most people do.
Yes, we do.
Yeah, so Stephen's a longtime friend, and one of the books he wrote was called Last Rights, RIGHTS. Subtitle is Rescuing End of Life from the Medical Industry.
Oh,
And
I
he
like this already.
writes in there about if you ask people on the street,
Right.
how do you want to die, which we don't ask,
Right,
unfortunately, people will say, I want to die at home surrounded by loved ones.
Right.
You know, easily
That's what I say.
75, 80%
Right.
will say that.
Yeah.
Yet 75% of us die in hospitals, in pain, and maybe not alone, but with someone sitting uncomfortably in a chair
Right. Right.
next to us. So why the disconnect? You know, and it's that we don't know how to do death.
Yeah.
And so hospice is a great step in that direction,
Yes.
in recognizing that end of life is inevitable,
Yep.
and what we often need is comfort, not intervention.
There you go.
And so I see death doulas as
Right.
an extension.
Wonderful.
of
Now,
that.
she was telling me that there are many types of training. Some are like a weekend, and she went to a lengthy course. It wasn't at UVM, but it was very similar. It was over, I forget where she was, out of state. But, you know, she said that some have very little training, and others, like herself, have a lot of training. And her book was a wonderful book. It was easy reading and very, very personal. Obviously, when you're reading about that, you're thinking about yourself.
Right.
So I'll send you the link. She's marvelous. And
I
her
would appreciate
husband
that.
is a, they run a camp together, and it's about talking and feelings and that sort of stuff. And he practices Buddhism. He's a Buddhist. And I just thought, what an amazing couple. At first, I was skeptical. And I met her at my other office, the Red Hen on Route 2, where I hold all my meetings. But I was so impressed with her, I had her come on the show. She was great.
And you know, and in our conversation just now, talking about end of life being
Yeah.
inevitable, and what we need is comfort and pain relief.
Right.
You know, you have these conversations, and everybody nods their heads,
Yeah, right.
and you realize that is, it's a kind of a nurturing on the way
Yeah.
out
Right.
that we don't get often enough.
Well, and when you get to be a certain age, every time you pick up the paper, there's a reminder, because somebody's name of somebody you know. There was one other one that you and Deanna had sponsored about the Abenaki. And we have the Chief Don, I forget Don's last name, he's the chief of one of the Abenaki tribes here. I can tell from your face you don't.
So
let me see,
we,
hold
I know we both sponsored
Indigenous
the
Peoples' Day.
Peoples' Day.
Right,
yes.
and then there's one which exempts state-recognized Indian tribe, for real estate from taxation.
I don't know that I sponsored that
Oh, you're
one.
not? Oh, okay, because that was the two of them, and we're having the chief come on, and they're going to talk about language, because there's a woman who's going to join him that teaches Abenaki, teaches the
Oh,
language
wonderful.
in Middlebury.
That's great.
Yeah. He's been on my show before with the woman, she's since moved out of state, the woman who is in charge of the Indian Council that we have at the state level. And that show was great. It was just fabulous. So I'm trying to, and he suggested we talk about the language, because I think it's almost like the deaf language, where signs and symbols mean something. So you're more creating a vision in your head from the signs and symbols that they're talking about. I may be wrong, but I'm looking forward to the show, and he was looking forward to some of these
Another show
things.
I would like to see.
Oh, well, I'll send it to you. He was waiting for some bills to pass over crossover, and I was thinking maybe one of these bills was something that he was, because he goes up to the legislature to testify.
And I know there has been, they've been working on bills in, I believe it's the General Housing and Military Affairs.
Oh, yes, that's where he, that's where he would go.
Which is Deanna's.
Yeah.
Deanna is
that's right.
vice chair,
Maybe
or
she's
ranking
the one.
member, sorry, of the committee.
Oh, good for her.
And I'm, so I'm not as familiar with the, I'll say the smaller bills.
Yeah, well,
because you
some
get
of them
caught up
don't,
in,
yeah, sure. They don't
your
move.
own
We call that
committee.
the rust wall when they land
Yes.
up on the wall and they don't come down. I have one that I didn't understand. You have on your website, you talk about seeing addiction decriminalized. I thought addiction at this point in our history is more of a disease than a crime. So could you explain?
I think we're getting there.
Oh, okay, but we're not there yet. Shame on us.
Yes.
Again, we did. What is this?
This has to stop, Pat.
Good grief.
When I say that, I'm thinking primarily of Portugal, for example, who took the really bold step that we are nowhere near having enough
Right.
faith to do, of decriminalizing all drugs. And so rather than...
Even the really tough ones?
Even heroin.
Yeah.
And rather than putting money into enforcement, they are
Treatment.
required to put that money into treatment.
Right.
And they have seen across the board 50% decreases
No
in
kidding.
addiction rates, in overdoses,
Interesting.
in crime rates.
Well, sometimes if you don't make it a big deal, it isn't a big... I was telling somebody the other day, in my house, my father was French, and at the table, you had a glass, and it was this full of wine when you were little, and water.
Mm-hmm.
And as you got older, you know,
percentages
the
changed,
percentages
yeah.
changed, and the day that your glass was full of wine, somehow or other it wound up around your 18th birthday. I don't know how that worked. But anyway, it wasn't a big deal. It's what you did. And I don't think anybody in our family has ever had any problem with alcohol, maybe other things maybe, but not alcohol, because it's just part of the meal, so it wasn't a big deal.
And when it's, what our culture tends to normalize is the binge drinking that happens when you hit 18 and
Right,
or
exactly.
now 21,
Right.
and you can drink,
Yeah,
as opposed to the more European
right.
perspective. And we did a similar thing with our daughters
Did
when
you?
they're
Good.
starting at probably 16, if they wanted to
Have a
have
drink.
some wine or beer
Good.
with dinner, they could do that. And I thought we were modeling
Yeah,
responsible,
well, in a controlled environment,
moderate
right?
control.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, consumption.
Yeah, that's great. I think that's a good idea. I think so. I just thought I'd say, well, I just thought we were beyond the decriminalization of addiction. We did an eight-part series here on the opioid crisis. I did 4 of the shows, and a gentleman, Ed Baker, over in Burlington, did the other 4, and we did it for the state. And what they're doing now is just not just treating the addiction, but they're treating the whole body, which is a much better approach. I'm not going to take the time now, but it's just a better approach that there's many things that you might relate to and make you feel better than just, sticking you full of drugs and that sort of stuff.
Right.
So
I mean, drug use is to mask pain.
yeah, we've
of-
come a
of some
long way,
sort.
I think.
So Project Vision in Rutland
Yep.
was in some ways a state leader in this, and when the police in Rutland said, we can't arrest our way out of this,
Interesting.
and they then brought in not just social services,
Yeah.
but clergy and educators and employers and counselors, and had it become a community enveloped. The users were enveloped by their
Right.
community.
I like Rutland as a town. It's a very good town. So we have almost 4 minutes
Oh,
left.
how did that happen?
I know, it goes fast as we talk. I talk too fast, the time goes. Could you spend the next 3 minutes giving your stump speech? I love when people do this. When you're like 17 long and they ask you to introduce yourself and why you're running and why we should vote for you. Because you agree with me, that's why we should vote for you.
Exactly. Interestingly enough, I don't really have a stump speech. and I actually tend to listen more than I talk.
Oh, breaking the mold.
Which,
That's a good
which
thing.
I think is important.
That's a good thing.
I do certainly have things that I consistently stand for and advocate for,
Right.
and that is basically a government and a culture that supports people, supports families, and pieces of that, as we talked about,
Right.
are well, we've been talking about minimum wage. We haven't talked about a livable wage.
That's true, another discussion.
But other supports like, when a family member is ill and you need to take time off to care for that person, or you're ill yourself,
Right.
and you lose your job or you lose your income, we want to, everybody wants to attract new people to New York. I mean, I'm sorry,
New York.
to Vermont.
I've done that before.
And how do we do that?
Right.
We do that by making this a place where people want to live, where they feel supported, where their families feel
Right.
supported and empowered.
Well, that would do it. That's a good
And-
thing.
and-
Is somebody running against you, do you know?
Yes,
Oh.
I've always had.
Have you
an
really?
opponent, yes.
That was going to be my dream if I kept going, that just have one year where nobody ran against you. Because there's a lot of legislators who have that happen.
There are.
Right.
I would love to be one
Yes.
someday.
Well, you will eventually. But-
And my races have always been close. Last campaign, I won 54 to 46, which was double my previous margin of victory.
Oh, wow. Well, there you go.
So
Winning's winning.
there-
Don't worry about it. It's like that one vote. And you need to tell people it really matters. Some people get so
it really
discouraged,
does.
but one vote really matters.
It does.
Yeah. I didn't realize it was both overrides that won and lost by one vote.
By one vote,
That was
yes.
my mistake. That's
Yeah.
scary.
At town meeting, I would bring that up and say, when people say my vote doesn't matter,
Right, it does.
it absolutely
Right.
matters. And then I do a little segue into the census and how important it is to be counted,
Oh, right.
which we don't need to do here.
No, we don't. We're here.
But the other things that I talk about, the local issues, the farming
Right. Oh, for sure.
situations, and what can we possibly do to support farms, to reduce burdens.
Right.
One thing I've suggested is there is talk about regenerative agriculture, which ties in with the resilience we were talking about.
Okay, right.
Increasing organic tilth
Right.
in the soil, and the biodiversity in the soil, and thus
Maybe we could help
resistance to
farmers be
disease.
organic.
And
We don't help them, do we? Because that's expensive.
it's expensive.
Because the
and
field has to be prepared for like years before you
3
can
years
actually. Is it
before
3?
you can be certified. And I said, what if instead of having this regenerative label be
Right.
another test, another payment of $500
Right.
or whatever for certification, if they achieve that level, what if we remove a number of earlier permits required,
Right.
or things where they have to prove
Be actually
compliance,
responsive to the farmer?
and reward them with that
Wow.
way, with relieving burdens.
Right.
And I have to say that was generally met with non-comprehension.
But that makes so much,
Yeah.
it really makes sense. I feel bad for the farmers. They just, their margin of profit is nothing, and they've got
It
kids
is.
to put through school, and of course, when they, go to retire, what we do to them on their land is
It's
another thing.
It is a
Yeah.
really tough way. It's not making a living, it's
No,
the
it's
the
not.
life you choose.
Exactly. Well, believe it or not, we have run out of time.
Well,
You're welcome back anytime.
well,
You
thank you,
got
Pat.
something new.
It's
and-
always a pleasure.
Oh, thank you. You too. I appreciate it. Thanks for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed the show. We'll see you next week. And in the meantime, keep listening beyond the sound bites.